Welcome to the second half of eclipse season. Last time we talked about the full moon in Libra. This time we're going to have the new moon in Aries. So just kind of a review on Aries and Libra. This is the axis of the self and others. So it's how do I relate to myself? How do I create my identity? What do I relate to actually outside of my physical self that I use to create my identity? And then who do I relate to within that identity? And how do I manage my identity within our relationship? So this has to do with our close personal relationships and anywhere where we're committed, whether that's like contractual in a business setting or a marriage, or it's if you think about governments, right? Our leaders have an obligation to us and are in relationship to us. So this is what we're dealing with on this axis. Now, what is an eclipse in general? An eclipse is this meeting point between the path of the sun and the path of the moon. When you hit the south node here, then we're talking about releasing things, letting things go. In tradition, this is the tail of the dragon that's moving and sweeping things out of its way as it moves. And then this eclipse, we're going to talk about the north node, which is the head of the dragon that is consuming and moving us on our path forward towards our destiny. Or in Vedic astrology, it talks more about how it's the things that we're striving for, that we want to consume or have, but sometimes we may get a little bit obsessive. In Hindu astrology, it's the dragon's head is cut off from the rest of its body. So I think that's really interesting. So we're going to have a solar eclipse tomorrow in Aries on the north node. That means this one is less about releasing things or letting go of things, and more about pushing out new cycles to push us into where we're supposed to be and where we're destined to go. So across cultures, eclipses are seen as omens or signs of change. I had so much fun looking at all the different ways that different cultures talk about how you should observe the eclipse. In Asia, in Vedic astrology and Chinese astrology, they talk about a dragon that is devouring the sun, devouring the light. And pretty much overall, almost all cultures are talking about something eating the sun, something trying to devour the light, right? And when we think about light in its symbolic context, we're talking about consciousness, we're talking about life itself. And so I thought it was funny that some cultures were like, yeah, there's a dragon devouring the sun. Here in Turtle Island, they talk about, the Cherokee talk about a frog that's devouring the sun. Some cultures talk about a squirrel. And so some people, the Yakui tribes here, sometimes in China, they talk about traditions where you go outside and you scream at the sun, actually, and you bang pots and you bang on rocks and you just make noise, and you bring awareness to the battle that's happening between the good and the bad, the dark and the light. And you really try and bring awareness to everyone else. Hey, look what's happening. And then you fight for father, son, or grandfather, son, depending on your traditions, that he will win and that the sun will be restored and the light will be restored. Some traditions, however, say that your awareness should come not from trying to draw awareness to the sun. It's kind of this idea that like fate has taken over, and the best thing for you to do is actually to go inside and to be in prayer. The Dene are very serious about this. They close all the windows. They don't let the light of the eclipse touch them. According to some of the traditions, like going outside under the light of the eclipse can, as a pregnant woman, it can lead to birth defects or it can lead to problems later in life. It's really very serious to go inside and really try to observe it from a point of reverence and humility, this idea that you should be in deep prayer, you should be fasting. But overall, we're seeing this idea of an imbalance happening. So something is off that comes to restore balance. And we're going to look for the eclipse to be sort of catalysts for the unexpected, right? It's this idea that this is out of our control. The sun and the moon are just going through their cycles. and we're mere observers. And so we kind of relinquish control in this moment. And specifically for this eclipse, there's a lot of like fear mongering and a lot of this is the end of the world and this is going to be this horrible time. And I'm in the process of decolonizing my astrology and learning more about indigenous astrology. And I thought that this was a really great time sorry, just wanted to make sure to if someone was trying to come in. Oh no, okay. This specific eclipse has quite a bit of significance for America because it's visible. It will be the path of totality is moving over the nation. But I found it really interesting what the Haudenosaunee people were saying about this eclipse, because they were saying that the first democracy to one of the world's first democracies and the first democracy to ever be founded here on Turtle Island was the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. And when I went to the Haudenosaunee Confederacy website, it said the Confederacy has been in place since time immemorial, which is really common when you read about Indigenous storytelling, because so much of their tradition was oral tradition and remains oral tradition and was not written down. But they were the original confederacy of nations that was here prior to colonization. And much of the US Constitution is based on the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. You've probably heard it called the Iroquois Confederacy, but that was a French word. So it is a confederacy of 5 nations. And they said that the sign for them to come together, to put down their weapons and to make peace and to write the law of peace was made on this eclipse a long time ago. And so again, we go back to this idea of an imbalance that's restoring balance. So even if there is something crazy that happens around this eclipse, there's this idea from the indigenous people here on Turtle Island that this is meant to happen, that this is part of the story, and that this is coming to actually bring peace upon the land. And so I thought that that was really beautiful. This eclipse will be passing over all 5 nations of the original territories of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy as well. So a little more positive spin on what's going on. And this is a solar eclipse in Aries. Solar eclipses are new moons, and they're just special new moons because everybody, the sun, the earth, and the moon are all lining up exactly. New moons in general always initiate new beginnings and cycles. In Aries, Aries is the first sign of the zodiac, so we're having double the emphasis on new beginnings and new cycles. We're really starting something new in the Aries part of our chart. Again, this is happening on the North Node, and this is a total eclipse as compared to eclipses prior or to even the full moon eclipse that we just had, which was a prenumbral eclipse, so it wasn't fully covered. This one's fully covered. So we have the idea that this is really an initiation into new cycles. It's also a supermoon. During supermoons, we can see earthquakes. And see, oh, I think I heard someone trying to come in. That's my mom's. So yes, during new moons, we can see supermoons. We can see crazy weather. We can see earthquakes, which we're already seeing. But in general, we want to think about this as a powerful new beginning. And what's really, really driving that motif home for me in this eclipse is that usually full moon cycles work in 6 months. So when there's a new moon, which happens every year in Aries, 6 months later, there's a full moon in Libra season, and we get some sort of like fruit or culmination, or kind of we see something, some harvest from our efforts and our laboring over the last 6 months. There will not be a full moon eclipse in Aries for quite some time, and it will not be there won't be a full moon in Aries that's an eclipse this year. So there's no real ending to this, or no real culmination point. Whatever we're beginning, we may find that it takes a while for it to mature. It takes a while for us to maybe see results, which is why I'm like, everyone's really hyping this up, but it may take a while before we see anything. And maybe that's more on a personal level, that it may just you start beginning something, but you're really, really learning something new. And so it's a while before you kind of see the fruits of your labor. So something to keep in mind. The next eclipse that will be visible over the US is in 2044. I think that really speaks to this cycle, because in 2044 will be when Pluto is moving out of Aquarius, which is kind of the end of this revolution in America, revolutionary period, I guess you could call it. So I think whatever cycle we're beginning will definitely help with, like the Haudenosaunee Confederacy talks about, with bringing peace upon the land, even if it's requires us to battle for that peace. We're really bringing peace here, and it's going to take a while. Now I want to talk about, this is like Hannah and I were talking about, we're feeling really tired right now. We're kind of like down. I want to talk about, Aries helps us begin this whole new cycle, this new astrological new year. Even though we're in Aries season, we're in this dark period, and the moon is in this dark period right now, where actually the moon is not visible. And normally for new moons, the moon would not be visible in the sky, right? So the moon would be experiencing some sort of death, and the birth would happen here when we start to see the light of the new moon again. So I thought this was interesting for what we're feeling, what's going on, all of this uncertainty. We should be welcoming it. We're in the darkness. We're in the dark phase, but there's nothing to fear from darkness, and there's nothing to fear from death. This is the natural cyclical process that we go through. First, we have a birth, and upon our birth is not necessarily when we are the seed. It's when we sprout from the seed, and it's when we actually bust through something. We kind of have to battle to get to the surface, if you think about a plant in a little seed pod. And then as a youth, we start to build our roots. We start to make sure that we feel stable enough to grow taller, and learning what will keep us stable in order to grow taller. Then we start to reach our maturity, and that's when we have fruits and flowers and everything's blossoming and blooming. Think summertime, think full moon. And then we move into the stage of old age, where we're still maybe able to harvest some of our fruits, some of the later fruits. We're enjoying our harvest, but we start to see evidence of decay. And then we enter this stage that we're in right now, which society has really taught us to fear, and taught us that it's bad if we're in this stage and bad things are going to happen to us, which is that we died, but we haven't yet been reborn. We've been buried, actually. And this is the idea that I want us to welcome during this new moon eclipse, during this dark phase, especially right now. We're literally in the darkest phase. We are in our little death seed pod. So dark moon phases are the closure phase of the cyclical process of life, as well as the transition to the next spiral. So the birth is the death. They are one and the same. And this moment in between, where we've maybe lost our body, but we haven't lost our soul and the energy of our soul, right? Because energy can never be destroyed, but we haven't yet found our new body. We haven't sprouted our new body. This in-between moment where we don't know what's going to happen, where we can feel fear and uncertainty, this moment is necessary. And so I want us to welcome everything that's coming up during these moments, because it's necessary for us to sprout properly. So all cycles have a dark phase, a naturally occurring recessive period where life experiences an essential mutation and must wait for the regeneration of form to catch up to your mutation. So if you think about all of the changes and awakening that have been happening in the world right now, it's taking a while for the systems and for the form, the structures that we have to catch up to the new life that we want to bring into the world, the new world that we want to bring in. And like I said, this is natural, this is necessary. There's nothing to fear here. We see this with the moon cycle. Every month, the moon is dark when it goes into that waning crescent, balsamic phase. It's dark, we can't see it, but we know that it is inevitable that the light will return, and that the moon will return to us. This is the same with nighttime. And if you go back to this chart and you think about even the birth chart, this part of the birth chart is the astral realm. It's the part where we have lost our body, but where does the soul go? Where does the soul spend time before it enters the body again, here at the cusp of the chart, at that breath of light? So hibernation, incubation in the egg, are the crone phase of our life, when we become, as women, when we enter our sorry, not menstrual. Why am I using the word? Menopause. When we enter our menopause, is also a dark phase of our life. This is usually when we become closer to the spiritual realm, where we're about to meet death. We're better huntresses. Traditionally, we've become masters of our connection to the spiritual realm as women. And that's why when the patriarchy took over control, they cast out older women. They made us think that they were useless in society, because they feared the power of the crone stage, of the woman who was connected to death, and the power that she has because of that. The final trimester of pregnancy is also a death, because even as a mother brings new life into the world, she experiences a death of herself. She will never be the same after that. And even mothers talk about having to go to the spiritual realm to bring their baby back, or bring the new life into the world. So I think it's actually a really beautiful phase that we should welcome the lessons of, because it is necessary, and we can either suffer through it, or we can welcome it. And there's the idea here that life is not linear. This closer phase is not final. People want you to think that life works like this, but it's just little spirals. So the death is the necessary transition to the renewal. And we're having an Aries solar eclipse. So that's Aries archetypes are going to color the themes that we experience around the solar eclipse. Mars is the ruler of Aries, and Mars is the god of war. So I think that's also why there's a lot of fear around this eclipse. I mean, I think we're already at war, but we might see an intensification of attacks or just aggression, really Mars, Aries energy. But people often don't talk about how Mars is also the guardian of agriculture, and farmers would pay patronage to him, and set altars to him, and make offers to him, because he embodies the story of both destruction and creation. He is the warrior that knows that life will always follow death. And Aries also ushers in the spring, right? It's literally the time of the seed. So this lesson here from Mars is that where battles end, new life begins. And I think this has been really comforting to me to think about as we're witnessing what's happening in Palestine. We're creating a new world, and we're embodying our new selves and our ways of being. But before we can lead others, before we can start really acting on this new world and trying to usher it in and bring it in material form, we have to do the work on ourselves. We have to meet ourselves, right? And eclipses bring shadows forward. So we're seeing the shadow of Aries come up, the shadow of our own identity we're being presented with. Aries represents the seed, the inceptions of ideas, the spark that ignites action. This is the energy of flowers blooming, pushing up through the snow that is not yet melted. Again, I think of the battle that life has in order to live. Like, you're in this little seed pod and you're in the dark, and you're a little seed and you're ready to sprout. You've got to painfully bust open out of that seed, and then you've got to take on new life as a sprout. And there's got to be a moment where you're still in the dark as the sprout, and you're like, which way do I go? Where's the light? How do I grow? Do I go up? Do I go down? Do I go left? Do I go right? So we're emerging life from our grave, from the deaths that we've experienced around our identities, around how we relate in our identities to the world. But you cannot emerge in seed form. You have to take on new life, or new form. So Aries is a cardinal. That means it comes first. It ushers in new cycles. It's yang. That means out of the duality of yin and yang, it's expressive, it's outward energy, it's action energy, and it's fire. So again, heating, we think about things pushing up. Aries embodies the spirit of action, initiation, and dynamism. It's all about taking the leap, sometimes even before you're sure where you'll land. So again, think about that little seed sprout trying to come out and going, where do I go? we're guided by our intuition, by our instinct during Aries season, not urgency. So not this idea of I have to do this now, this has to happen. Urgency is what happens when we're told that there's not enough, and there is enough, and this is all meant to happen, and we're in this dark phase, and this is part of the cycle. So we need to be connecting to our intuition in this time rather than urgently trying to usher in something that actually is going to take collaboration between us and forces much bigger than us. I will say, okay, I was looking at the last time we had Aries eclipses. It was April 2005. And there's a theme here of leadership change, right? Aries is the warrior, but he's the warrior that leads you into battle. In tarot, he's the emperor, the king. So there's this idea here of like the shadow of leadership being exposed to us. I don't know about you guys, but I'm absolutely not satisfied with how our leaders are acting, how they're representing us, how they are fulfilling their contractual obligations to us. So there's going to be issues that arise during that. That could look like a leader suffering a health issue, a leader stepping down or having to step down. In 2005, the Pope passed away. So I think that's, a leader leaving a position of power, and then us having to usher in a new cycle of leadership. And we also think about this cycle bringing forth new leaders for us. So seeing the shadow side or the kind of ugly side of leadership happening right now, and then maybe leaders stepping out from the shadows. And this can also be in your personal life. Like, look at your Aries house in your chart and see where you need to start new cycles, where you need to do new things, try new things, start a new cycle of change, become the leader. And even if no one else is doing it, do it, start it. So those are the themes with Aries. And I looked at the degree for where exactly the sun and the moon will be. And it was really interesting because it's at the exalted degree of Aries. It's going to happen at 19 degrees of Aries. And exalted just means it's more powerful, it's more potent. But I thought this symbol was really beautiful and maybe kind of quells what we're feeling about all of this like fear mongering that's coming. And it was the symbol for this degree was a young person feeding birds in the winter. So this symbol shows the ability to help those in need of help, to provide safety, security, nourishment, or emotional support, especially to those who may not know how to solve their problems themselves. There are those that stubbornly resist moving on or changing their habits, even if it is to their detriment, and providing them with a safe harbor can bring many rewards. This is really interesting to me because this is bringing up very difficult themes of forgiveness, and also of needing to protect those who are least protected, right? The birds in the winter, someone small, children, people who are at a disadvantage. So this symbol teaches us about sharing and caring and having non-judgmental attitudes that can move you to help them and lead them to trust. A dedication to helping others has its own rewards. Now here's the chart for the day, for tomorrow when the eclipse is happening. As you can see, it's really interesting because everything's over here. So there's nothing aspecting the moon. There's nothing opposing or squaring the moon. Here's the moon right here at 19 degrees, and here's the sun. The only thing we really see is that there's a square to Pluto, which just, to me, brings more themes of like we're really excavating the shadows. We're bringing things to light. And we are also having quite a lot of Aries energy, which is action, which is aggression, which is acting, doing something happening, making something happen. So we have the North Node here. So we think about our destiny, moving forward on our path, fate, what's meant to happen will happen. We have Venus here, our desires, what we're attracting. We also talk about money with Venus, art, and then Mercury here as well. But Mercury is retrograde. So I think that adds an interesting coloring to this. The big thing here is that it's not on the chart here, but this eclipse will conjunct Chiron. It's in the exalted degrees of Aries, so even more potent, powerful Aries energy. And then this Mercury RX, whenever we're having a Mercury retrograde, we want to be thinking and about how we can better communicate. We want to be pausing before we actually act, and especially because Mercury is in Aries. We'll talk about it as we get into the aspects of this eclipse, but there's a lot happening, and at the same time we're being told to wait, we're being told to pause, we're being told to really be careful about our responses, because they kind of have, with all this Aries energy, a lot the potential to really explode. So that's something to think about with this Mercury retrograde. If something comes in to your experience that's very triggering or very intense for you, take a moment to pause and think about how you can revise the ways that you can communicate or even think about this, right? Because Mercury also has to do with our mind and our intellect and how we're thinking. So Chiron, this is really coloring a lot of the solar eclipse. It's Chiron and Aries. Chiron is in Aries. They're going to be right on top of each other. If you don't know Chiron's story, Chiron is an asteroid, and he is named for the centaur Chiron. And Chiron was born as a product of rape. His mother was raped by Zeus, and his dad, Zeus just left. And his mother was so distraught by what had happened to her, and her son came out half human, half horse as a centaur. She was like, what is going on? I'm so traumatized. She prayed to the gods to relieve her pain, and they turned her into a linden tree, which is the tree of the heart and heart medicine. But this left Chiron abandoned at birth, rejected, feeling a lot of intense pain that he didn't do anything to cause as a child. And he was taken in by Apollo, and he was taught the arts and music and herbalism and in healing arts. And then he went on to become a great healer and teacher to some of the great heroes in mythology. And eventually he was wounded later in his life with an arrow that had poison on it that could not be healed. He couldn't heal himself. And so he had to learn to live with this wound. And this wound, he began to learn how to alchemize his pain into his greatest power, to see his pain as something that could motivate him, something that was meant to happen to him, that was part of his story, and that he couldn't quite transcend. He actually chose to no longer be immortal and to die, because he couldn't heal the wound. So Chiron really shows us where we have wounds that can't really be healed. We have to learn to live with them now. We have to learn to clean and wash them, and then learn a new way of being with them. And oftentimes we can look to our childhood for where we may have acquired that wound. So Chiron's influence is going to bring to the surface deep-seated wounds related to Aries themes like identity, assertiveness, and individuality. I have a article on Chiron if you'd like to read about it. He's been in Aries since 2018, and he'll be there until 2026. So America is having its Chiron return. So the childhood or early wounds of America and its identity, political identity, gender identity, all these ways that you say, I am who I am, racial identity, people are wearing their identities much more proudly, loudly, and we're healing and having to really face the wounds of our political identities, our racial identities here in America. So during this eclipse, you might face issues that are surrounding the right to be yourself, feelings of disconnect from your instinct, from who you really are, fear of taking action, or even some unresolved trauma, especially from childhood, that are related to aggression and conflict. But thankfully, because it's in Aries, we can channel that warrior spirit. So this eclipse offers us a chance for a significant turning point in our healing journey. Even though all this is coming to the surface, it's coming to the surface so that we can heal it, so we can wash it. If we don't acknowledge it collectively and personally, whatever comes up for us, we will be in pain, and we will also what you see a lot of times with people when they're confronted with their own wounds and their own pain, especially in your identity, when you try to suppress that, it can lead to illness, right? But it can also lead to you lashing out and hurt the idea of hurt people. So I think that's also where we might see some conflict and aggression from people not wanting to face the wounds, not wanting to talk about what's happened here in America, not wanting to talk about what's happened in their lives and not deal with it. And that just leads to further pain and even violence. And so it's this powerful moment of self-forgiveness and acceptance. So again, I think back to that symbol of the birds. Maybe it's not you needing to help someone else. Maybe it's you needing to offer that forgiveness to your inner child for the times that you maybe experienced some pain, but you didn't show up for yourself, or you couldn't show up for yourself, or you didn't know how. It's really, we're expecting events to urge us to confront and feel the pain that we've been avoiding. I think it's really important to note that we cannot understand how to confront shame and guilt in the world systems and meet them with love, with forgiveness, with compassion, in order to help people, awaken and help us fix these systems and usher in a new world. We can't do that if we don't know how to forgive ourselves first. So I want you to really focus on that for this eclipse. Whatever happens, whatever you're going through, forgive yourself first for not showing up for yourself, for your inner child, whatever it is. And then again, we're in this Mercury retrograde. So rethink your approach to expressing anger, asserting your needs, sharing your thoughts. This is a time to explore new ways of communication that are going to better reflect who you are now, how you've changed, how you've grown, your inner world now, to consider how your mindset and your perceptions need to change in order to support your healing and your growth. You're not those past versions of yourself, and you can forgive them and you can thank them and tell them that you love them for getting you to where you are today, because you wouldn't be here today without even the mistakes that you did make. You wouldn't be where you are now. On April 10th, which is Wednesday, we're going to have a Mars Saturn conjunction. This is one of 5 Mars conjunctions happening this year. Whenever we see Mars conjunctions, action, right? Something's happening. This is really where I think we might see something leaning more towards like active war or aggression. Mars has to do with action, right? But it also has to do with military, workers, service workers. I'm thinking of the bridge and the ship. Those were, there were workers that were on the bridge. Saturn has to do with structures, rules, and also the military as well, the Navy. And this is all happening in Pisces. This is the sign of the sea, of the ocean. So for collectively, we might see something happening on the seas, maybe maybe, what I was thinking was maybe a blockage. Like I've seen the Houthis talking about blocking aid, blocking ships and travel, or maybe just an attack in and of itself. The Mars-Saturn conjunction in Pisces brings to the forefront issues related to fear, insecurity, and internal blockages. This is Saturn's influence. Saturn wants us to overcome our fears and our insecurity and our whatever's blocking us internally. And Mars wants us to act. So Mars is the warrior, Saturn is the master. So the warrior meets the master in this moment in Pisces, in the sign of the ocean, but in the sign of the spiritual as well. So we're confronted with things that may be hindering our ability to assert ourselves, set healthy boundaries, start the new project, right? We're having this Aries eclipse. We want to start new things, live this new life. And then something comes and puts the brakes on it and says, wait a second, something is bubbling to the surface, but we're frustrated in how we're dealing with it, either with the rules, Saturn, right? Is the rules are the law. And then this Piscean influence can make these challenges feel more elusive, confusing, connected to deeper, maybe subconscious emotional currents. So again, we're really looking at our emotional bodies in order to understand how to move through this conjunction. Might be confronted with feelings of guilt or shame, especially with those rooted in past experiences, traditions, religious conditioning. Saturn in Pisces is definitely bringing up religious conditioning, religious rules. People may really be questioning that, questioning why their spiritual leader isn't speaking out, why their spiritual leader isn't acting about what's this active genocide that we're watching. And this all may surface as we try to assert our desires or our instincts, which can lead to, maybe someone gets in a fight with their spiritual leader. Hey, why aren't you saying something? Actually, what we want to do is look at how this is helping us change in compassion. So we might see a shift in people going, okay, the rules aren't working. Like, screw the rules. We need to act from a place of compassion. We need to help change things. We might see it the other way, but hopefully not. And then again, the Pisces connection to spirituality and collective unconscious can amplify all of this, making it a time when a lot of people are going to be grappling with existential doubts or struggling to find clarity in their emotional and spiritual lives. So it's like you have this dark phase, you don't know what's going to happen, something comes, it triggers a bunch of stuff for you. You need to make a decision and move in a new path, and then you also have something that really tests your faith. So this could be a very challenging rest of the month. But again, we want to think about how we can change our idea of compassion and how we can embody the master when it comes to our warrior, especially in the spiritual realm. And I wanted to talk about the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction that's going to happen at the end of the month. That's going to happen on April 20th. This is a little bit further off, so maybe not within the eclipse realm, but I think it is relevant, and I'm not having another meeting till the full moon, which will be after this. So I did want to talk about it because this is, I talked about it in my 2024 astrology video, and I put it in articles online. This is like a really powerful transit. Jupiter, who is the planet of growth, expansion, higher learning, and blessings and abundance, will be meeting Uranus, which is the planet of shocking upheaval and liberation. So when two planets meet in the sky, they kind of channel each other's energy. And they're meeting in Taurus, which is the sign of women, the sign of the land, of resources, and of money. So this has only occurred in Taurus 3 times since the year 1100. So this is a pretty rare transit. After this, Jupiter is going to move into Gemini, which I could talk about all day. I'm very excited for an internet renaissance, but we'll talk about that with the next moon. But historical events like the moon landing and the French Revolution have occurred during Jupiter-Uranus conjunctions. So they're pretty powerful, and they really illustrate the potential of this transit to coincide with significant breakthroughs, social shifts, which might in the beginning look like social unrest. So with Jupiter and Uranus, the common ground here, right, is we're something shocking happened to liberate us, and we need to grow and expand. So there's an orientation to the future, a future that's better than what we have now, because it's actually fitting this changed, mutated, liberated embodiment of who I really am now. This awakening that's happened. So we have this idea that Uranian genius Uranus is the innovative planet that makes new things and creates new ways of being, meets Jupiter's optimism. So overall, I think it's a pretty positive transit. This will, we can expect an event that will shock us into a revolutionary spirit if you're not already feeling revolutionary enough. When it comes to what we value and how we use our resources, just Taurus, and also the land, this is what we think of as a resource. Could bring unexpected events, especially in financial markets, issues related to Taurus themes like money, resources, women's rights. I did find it really comforting that another indigenous tribe, I cannot think of the name right now, but they were talking about how there's like an asteroid or a comet that is a goddess, and she protects women and women's rights. That is part of this eclipse. So I'm hoping this is positive news. I don't bring back abortion rights. The financial markets might experience volatility or sudden shifts during this period, thinking again about maybe blockades on shipping. This has a lot of potential for an earthquake or earthquakes in general. So maybe that's something that messes up the economy or, something like that. Basically, we're just, it could also be us like an announcement about a new type of currency or a new type of um, financial tool that comes that really kind of makes the market volatile, but in the end is much more beneficial. Hopefully, us moving towards decentralization, right? We're realizing that these old economic systems don't work. The way we relate to the land, it doesn't work. So something's coming to really shock us into like, hey, it's not working, and you need to make moves now. You need to grow and expand beyond what you're doing right now. This isn't the sign of the bull, right? The bull can be bullheaded. So though we may be reluctant to change, we're reminded that the ability to pivot and embrace something new is not just valuable, it's necessary for us to survive. Okay, done with all the eclipse astrology stuff. We talked about last time about how we're in Aries season, and Aries really taxes our adrenals. We can be in the state of urgency. Our body is urgent and responding to all these new things popping up. That can cause us a lot of exhaustion. So we want to make sure we're taking care of our adrenals. I wanted to talk about spring and spring health in general as we move deeper into spring, but also because I think it's really relevant to this eclipse and what's going to happen. So in spring, we want to focus on the liver and the lungs. These two organs are transcending their physical role and emerging as crucial detoxifiers to cleanse the body of winter's lingering sluggishness and sadness, right? Our liver helps us clean our body of things we don't need. The liver is also in charge of our emotions, and the liver speaks through anger and the lungs speak through grief. So these two organs can help us process this as we're going through all of this eclipse that makes us want to act and start new things, but then we need to put the brakes on and we need to mitigate things and we need to make sure we're remembering how we're speaking and communicating. We can definitely feel frustrated and stuck, right? So when the liver chi or energy flow of the liver is stagnant or disrupted, it can manifest in mood swings, irritability, sense of frustration. It's anger. Anger explodes up and out of our body. The liver opens into the eyes. The liver and our eye health are directly connected. So our dreams, the liver rules our dreams, our decision making. It's associated with the spiritual realm, dreams and visions. So this is Aries, right? We need to be the leader of our life. We need to start a new cycle. We need to have a dream, a vision that we're executing on, that we're acting on. We need our liver to be healthy. The liver is called the general of the body. So it makes the decisions for us to move. And so if we're feeling stagnant and angry and frustrated and stuck, then we're not going to have great vision either, right? Not going to have great decision-making skills. This is why alcohol is terrible, because it hinders our decision-making skills. And then when liver chi is imbalanced, it can also lead to disruptions in lung chi. So where the liver is the general, the lungs are the official. So I think of them like a diplomat, like the liver is telling us, okay, we need to do this. We have a vision. And then with our breath, we actually help to communicate that and create it. So focus on breath work, processing your grief, right? Processing the anger that comes up, not letting it get stuck and stagnant in your body. And that can really help us keep both organ systems healthy during this time. And then in spring, we want to concentrate on green and the wood, right? We think of the wood element showing us how to move up and out like sprouts, expansive, upward moving energy. And green is all around. That's the color of sprouts as they bust out from the ground. So you want to embody that energy of the sprouts. So you want to eat them. You want to eat sprouts, broccoli, beans, peas, kale, lettuce. They're fast-growing foods. They have an ascending, expansive energy, and they're also cooling and cleansing for all this Aries fire that we're experiencing. This is also a time where it's getting warmer and we're more excited. There's more things happening. People are meeting up. We're seeing people we haven't seen all winter, or doing things we haven't done all winter. And we go outside and we're like, oh, it's so warm. And we forget our jacket, or we don't take our scarf, and then we get sick. So you want to make sure you're protecting your body from the wind during this time. yeah, we're tempted to go outside without a jacket. The sun is brighter, but our bodies are still adjusting. Our bodies are in nature time, and they're still adjusting and unfurling from their kind of winter cocoon. So we need to make sure we're still protecting them. The wind is a pathogen in Chinese medicine, and it can bring in foreign substances and pollen and all this into our body. So want to be careful, make sure we're protecting ourselves from the wind, wear a jacket, wear scarves. And then for herbs that you can work with to really embody some Aries energy fire, but also to mitigate it if you're maybe feeling like you're having too much, feeling a lot of urgency in your body. Mint is, I think, probably my best suggestion for this eclipse and for you in general. Mint is cooling, it's green. It's a breath of fresh air. It can help you focus. It can help the mind focus. So during this Mercury retrograde, during this kind of confusing Mars, Saturn, Pisces conjunction, we need some clarity. So mint tea, putting mint in your pasta salad, like just working with mint in general can be really helpful. You can even do like a steam or something in the morning before you start your day. Ginger is a Mars Aries herb. It helps our blood flow better. It gives us energy. A really great herb to work with during the season, and also boosts the immune system. Nettles, which is I have in my tea right now. Nettles are really nourishing. They're full of minerals and vitamins to help replenish the body and especially the blood after winter. Hibiscus has a fiery red energy, but it's actually cooling, really great for cooling the body down and cooling the blood. And then dandelion root is really amazing for cleansing your liver. So these are great, really accessible, easy herbs to work with. I think I found all of these in like a health store, Whole Foods. You could have them all as tea if that's an easy way for you to take it. So yeah, that's all.